monitoring, ask those questions as they come up. Um, but to get started, Phil and Jeff, can you briefly introduce yourself, your experience with the 70, and then to the best of your ability, how would you describe the 70 miler to somebody who's maybe never done it before and is thinking about it? Hi, Deborah.
So I'm Phil Millspaugh. I've been uh, canoe racing for 26 years now. Um, and so since I started, I haven't missed a General Clinton. So this year will be my 26th year. Um, Former NIPRA president, just active canoe racer in general. Uh, as far as what do I think the General Clinton, I guess best way to describe it, it's hard, but definitely doable. I think it's fun, which I think would doing it 26 years in a row would show that. So that's my opinion on it.
And I'm Jeff Pederson. I have 21 starts for the Clinton and 20 finishes. I had a little boat problem one year. Um, in terms of the race, uh, I think it's an awful lot like doing one of our 2-hour weekend races, going as hard as you can pretty much all day long. But with that said, I've had a couple of years where I just did it to get a finish. And um, it's not that difficult if you pace yourself and make it a all day long thing.
Nice. Um, Anybody have questions ready to go that they would like to ask now? 'Cause I have a list if we don't have anything right now.
And go through the list to start.
Yeah. So, first question I have is what would you say the most challenging aspect of the race is?
I think the most challenging aspect is just the variety of the water that you encounter throughout the race. Like it starts on a lake, then you get about an hour of swift water, so pretty technical, twisty, turny, narrow. Then it widens out and it's kind of more lake paddling again, and then you get some on again, off again rapids for the second half. So I think it tests every skill you need for paddling, which makes it a fun race. So it's not one condition start to finish.
I would agree with that. Changing conditions all day long in terms of the water, but also each year you don't know what you're going to get in terms of weather. So you have to be prepared for just about anything.
Yeah, I guess spinning off of that, like what's the major difference like if it's like a high water year versus a low water year versus something in between? Like what changes with like your preparation or your expectations for it?
I like to say that 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a shallow water year. Last year was the exception to that, where we had really good water. Um, I don't prepare any differently. Uh, I always expect to be paddling on shallow water. So, I mean, there are different sections of the river that are always deep. There are different sections of the river that are almost always shallow. Um, so I just train for the length of the race versus anything else.
Yeah, I'd say I don't really prepare any differently. I always assume it's a low water year. I kind of know what my finish time should be, so I prepare for that. If it's a faster year, then great. I think weather wise, you can't plan for it, but you see what the weather is a few days before and you prepare for that. So if it's going to be a cold, wet year versus a hot year with a headwind, like you kind of change your nutrition based on that. But otherwise, my training and my overall race prep and mental prep is the same.
Which do you think is harder? Like if it's like abnormally, well, not even abnormally, but if it's more of like a shallow water year or high water, because like different people have different preferences and like different teams do better or worse in different conditions. So like what are your guys' preferences for conditions on race day?
I prefer a shallow water year. I think if you're good at shallow water, you can pop the boat up, you can go faster, so you have a better overall comparative performance. Um, I think even physically, I feel like it's easier on a low water year. Um, if it's higher water, even though you're moving faster, it just the water feels more punishing. It feels like you're paddling cement. So you don't get that pop, you don't feel the boat lift, but it's so yeah, you get in maybe an hour faster if it's a high water year, but you feel like you worked a lot harder. So it's I prefer the shallow water years.
I don't really have any preference. Um, like I've said before, I always pretty much prepare for shallow water, and being living where I live, I can be on almost any part of the river within 30, 40 minutes. So I get a chance to look at every section of the river and know where the channels are, know where the faster water is, and I try to use that to the best of my ability.
Yeah, it's a real benefit to like knowing the river so well and like both of you having done the race so many times and then Jeff like having the river in your backyard. Like um it makes a difference to like know kind of like your home field advantage. So I guess is there something that you think first timers should know either about like specific areas of the river or like how to like read certain sections, like anything that first timers should know that they might not know just from their own research?
I mean, it's hard to if you don't know the course, it's hard to say specifically this area is an area that you need to do X, Y, or Z for. I think if you know how to read river current, that's a big benefit because there is a decent amount of current throughout the majority of the race. So as you're coming into some twisty, turny parts, like being able to read where the water's flowing, so you can avoid the shallows, you can avoid the obstacles. I think the first hour and a half, you don't have much of a choice. You go where the water's taking you. There's sometimes sections that are only wide enough for one boat to go, and all the boats are so close. You pretty much just follow the boat ahead of you. So it's not all that like the race you can't get lost in. So it's just a question of can you find the easier water and the faster water, which I think just comes from being able to read the current. There's not any one spot that I'd say is a deal breaker if you took the wrong line or you missed even the shortcuts that are there. They're not huge time savers if you take the long way around, but you do it smoothly. I think you're gonna, as long as you keep the boat upright, you're gonna come out even.
And as a beginner or first timer, probably preparing for many different water conditions would be wise. Um, Paddling some fast water with some ripples in it, possibly getting out on a lake where it might be a little bit bumpy because the start uh, takes 15, 20 minutes to get off the lake, and it's pretty bouncy out there with all the other boat waves. Um, Remembering back to my first time, I just wanted to see if I could make it from Cooperstown to Bainbridge, and that was my goal. Um, there may be people who are beginners, and that's their goal. There may be other racers that are fairly experienced racers that um, have never done the Clinton, and um, their goals and expectations would be completely different.
If you had a couple hours on Saturday before, are there sections you would scout?
Yeah, I would suggest if the Saturday before, I mean, I wouldn't paddle too long because you have a long day ahead of you on Sunday. If you can get out Friday, that's probably a more reasonable time to do some more serious scouting. I think if you can do a common place to paddle would be like paddling from Cooperstown to Index. Sometimes it's not worth it because the dam release hasn't happened yet. So the water level on race day is going to be completely different. But just to give you an idea of like which turns are coming where, that sometimes is worth looking at. There is a pretty substantial shortcut immediately below Goodyear Dam. I think that's worth scouting if you're not familiar with that area, just to check a couple of different lines out. And then I think probably the other place is what's called Green Acres, which is just above Sydney. Again, it's not a huge make or break, but it's just there's a few different channels there that you don't want to get confused at the end of the race, and so that's worth looking at. I don't know, Jeff's there and paddles that river all the time, so he might have a little more of an opinion on what's more meaningful.
Well, I agree with you, Phil, on the things you mentioned early on down to Goodyear. Just below the Oneonta Dam, there's a few different lines depending on the water level that people can take, and there's a couple of sections there that are relatively tricky. So that would be good to look at down from the Oneonta Dam down to the next highway bridge. And then 30 minutes more downstream from there is a section that's right along Interstate 88 where you have to go extreme river left down through a really fast section of water. And if you've never been down through there and go down the middle of the river, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to not go swimming right there.
Yeah, and I'd say if you're coming into that for the first time, as you're approaching the final drop, that final rapid, it looks like you can't, but go as far possible left as you can imagine. Like it looks like you're going to go over rock, but if you just go all the way to the left, there really isn't much of a rapid there. So it looks like there's no water compared to the big wave on your right, but that's kind of the smooth way to get through that section. So just as it's probably about a mile long stretch that's parallel to 88. And so as you see that there's a long straightaway, and you'll probably see all the boats drifting to the left because they know that they're setting it up. But I'd say that's a big takeaway is if you can go as far possible left, almost touching shore, you'll come out of that fairly unscathed.
Yeah, our first year we were nowhere near far enough left. We had no context for this, and everybody in front of us flipped. We somehow made it through, but it was
it's doable. My first 2 years. Yeah, my first 2 years I forgot about it and I went straight down the middle, but we were in a fiberglass Coleman, so we just plowed through it and survived. But it was in the boats we paddle now, I would not want to do that again.
Yeah, Andrew and I body surfed down that a couple years ago. But spinning off of that, we don't get a ton of rapids in a lot of our other New York races. So any general advice for like how to tackle those?
My general advice is set up early, like enter a rapid straight. Like you don't want to steer through a rapid. You don't want to come into it semi cockeyed. So, I mean, once you're committed to the line, make sure the boat straightens out so you're going with the waves. Usually you can try to find a line that that skirts the eddy line where the waves are going to be a little smaller. So if you can, try to gauge like the inside of the turn. So it's not where the fast water is, but it's where the smaller waves are. But in general, whatever you do, just try to keep the boat as straight forward with the current as you can. And keep paddling.
And I've done it exactly the other way, Phil. I've in many years past braced my way down through those bumpy sections, and always figured I was faster by staying in the boat than trying to paddle uncomfortably. And I guess I'm talking mostly about C1 back in those days, where I would just brace my way down through, and then when I felt comfortable again, I'd begin paddling again. So staying in the boat is always a lot faster than doing something that you're uncomfortable with and having the outcome not be so good.
No, that's a very good point.
Have you guys had any situations where you rolled or had to pull over, like any kind of like things that don't go according to plan and like how you've dealt with them?
Definitely had a number of swims over the years. I've never swam on the lake at the start, but I know many who have. So that is something where if you can get good at open water reentry, that's going to be a big time saver. Otherwise, pretty much the rest of the course you can stand wherever you're going to swim. So I've had a few times where it's just barely shoulder deep, so it's technically standing, but not really conducive to getting in the boat. But you can mostly get your bearings, grab your boat, make sure you get your food and drink if it's within reach, and then just get over to shore, and it'll feel like you're taking forever, but in the end you really don't lose that much time if you can just do it smoothly. So don't panic. Get to shore, get your boat all the way empty. Like, don't try to get in the boat too quick with it half full of water because you're going to swim again. But yeah, I've swam in the rapids. I've swam in relatively calm, deep water where just another boat wave caught me the wrong way and rolled me. And so yeah, that's just part of the race. You get your stuff, get back in, and catch back up.
And most of my experience with that was back in the days when I was paddling C1 all the time, and I did exactly what you just said, Phil. Was tipped over up in the swamp near just below Cooperstown, and got my boat close enough to shore that I could get back in. Thought I had emptied it. Jumped back in the boat and went right out the other side because there was still too much water in the boat. So emptying the boat completely, even though it seems like it's a real time killer, is definitely worth spending that time on.
Yeah, keep telling yourself it's a long race. If you swim in the first hour, you got 7 more hours plus to catch back up. So it's not a deal breaker to take that extra 30 seconds to get the boat prepped and get your bearings and get back underway again.
Yeah, it's a lot of strategy for such a long race. And a lot of other things go into that as well, like food and drink and preparation beforehand. So, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what is kind of like your thought of like how you're going to fuel yourself on race day and how you're going to show up at the start line, like as prepared as possible?
Yeah, I'd say I've tried a couple of different things over the years. My first year, did it on a whim. Talked to my friend, said, "Hey, there's this big race. Do you want to go do it?" So we showed up with maybe 2 hours of training. Showed up with a Snickers and a Gatorade bottle, and our feed plan was, when we see my dad, we'll see what he has for us. And we had no strategy beyond that. And we, being young dumb kids, we finished just fine. now I definitely put a lot more thought into my nutrition. So it's, I think the big thing is train like you're racing, test your nutrition, see what do you like the taste of, what agrees with your stomach. I think depending on your intensity level, planning for anywhere between 400 to 800 calories in an hour. I usually try to target the middle of that. If I eat more than that, I start to feel sick. So I'm not eating everything that I'm burning. So I'm constantly in a calorie deficit for the duration of the day, but I'm trying to minimize that deficit. And then I just try to eat constantly. I eat before I'm hungry, and just try to stay ahead of it. That's my general strategy.
In my early years, we tried all kinds of different things, not knowing what we were doing. We were drinking things like Gatorade and eating all kinds of fruit, and most generally, you ended up feeling terrible the longer the day went. And in more recent years, I've really whittled things down to almost the bare minimum. I know how much I need to drink, and the supplement that I'm using, I don't eat anything all day long. I just drink, 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 and the only downside to that is when it's time to relieve yourself, and that's not so easy in the boat.
Yeah, I've definitely made it simple over the years as well. I plan for eating 1 gel per hour. I probably eat 1 gel every other hour, and then I do tend to eat a banana at Oneana just because I'm hungry. I want something in my stomach. I don't think it really helps my performance, but it just makes my stomach growl a little less. But yeah, I've pretty much found a drink formula that works for me that has the right amount of calories in it. So I'm not feeling depleted. I'm just hungry because I haven't had food.
Yeah. And I always think it's interesting, like how different people are, like what works for one person doesn't work for another. And like it really is kind of trial and error to find what works best for you. But 20 plus years in the Clinton, you'll find something that works for you. Um, so that's like preparation and execution on race day. But leading up to the race, I think a pretty common like rule of thumb is like trying to get 70 hours of training in before the 70. Like what is like what's your take on that? Like is that something that you follow, or like what are there other benchmarks that you try to hit before the 70? Because it's like the first big race of the season and first stage of the Triple Crown for the pro class, and it's like you want to definitely have a decent amount of training under your belt heading into it. So like what is kind of your mentality on that?
Oops. Um, my mentality is, I guess it depends on what your goal is. Like I said, like my first year, I went into it with no prep, and we got second in our class. So, I mean, we were in the C2 rec class, so it wasn't what I would consider a competitive class, but we were two 15-year-old kids and could plow through it. We heard for about 2 weeks after, so we paid the price. I think that's what my biggest take home is the training makes a difference for the last 2 hours, and it really makes the recovery feel better. I've noticed now that I have a young family, I don't get the hours that I used to get. And I do notice that where I was pushing the envelope for top 10 finishes with about 70 to 80 hours, now I'm lucky if I get 40 or 50, and I'm not there at the top 10. I'm having no problem finishing. So it's just a question of what's your realistic expectation and putting in the time to get there.
Mhm.
Back when I first started, um, before, back in the last century. The kind of the rule of thumb always was amongst the local paddlers was get 70 hours before the 70. And that was the competitive guys. I did it one year with as few as 40 hours, and with the, our goal was just to finish and have fun, and we did well all day long. In more recent years, I've usually hit 125 hours in the boat. Um, the downside of getting all of those hours in is in order to do that before Memorial Day, you're paddling in some really crappy weather.
Yeah, I think my big take home the last couple of years is don't compare yourself to other people's numbers. Like the numbers, I think sometimes that I got 100 hours was more of a bragging right than an actual meaningful 100 hours. Um, Whatever your hours are, try to make them purposeful. Like go out for a paddle and know what your goal for that paddle is. Like it's fine to have a 3 hour low threshold, easy paddle, but know that's what you're paddling for. Like don't go out there and just paddle for the sake of paddling and not have any direction. Like if you're going to have a sprint day, do sprints, do intervals, do your long grind, but always try to pick something to work on. Work on your technique, work on your balance, work on your pacing. Um, so I've focused on quantity or quality more than quantity over the last few years.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. Like quality over quantity, and like seat time is important to be able to just tolerate a long race, but the just being able to sit for that long, like it can only get you so far. So, like you said, Phil, like having intent and making the best over the time that you have, um, it's gonna look different for everybody.
No, the long hours do make a difference. Like you want to know before the race that something really doesn't feel good at 7 hours, so you can fix that, fix how you're sitting, fix your rigging in the boat. You don't want to find out halfway through the 70 that there's a pressure point that you could have otherwise figured out that you might not feel at 2 hours or even at 4 hours, but all of a sudden at 6 hours, that's all you can think about for the rest of the race. And if you can figure that out before race day, it makes a huge difference.
Hmm. Another question that I had, kind of going back to the nutrition, is the pits or the feeds, like any particular strategy that you try to implement for when you're going to eat or like when you're going to get food delivered to you, and where along the race you try to do that and what that looks like?
I have tried many different things. I've had as many as 5 different pit stops in years past, and more recently, I've start with a full supply of what I have at the start. Have a feed in Milford, which is 2:15 into the race. The downside of that location is that's where everybody feeds, so it can get kind of congested there. Um, my next feed is the Oneonta Dam because it's an easy access point. You're out of the boat, and your pit crew can get to you, um, and feed you without using any time on the water. And then I usually take my last feed in Wells Bridge, um, out of a boat. My son has, um, over the years gotten pretty good at finding somebody to help them, and they take a very stable boat out and they feed us out of a boat, so we don't have to go to shore and stop. We can They just drop our items at our feet, and then we keep moving, and then we stow our things when we can. Um, that works for me. 3 feeds work for me because I use 2 liter uh, drink containers, so I know I'm good for about 2 hours for each jug. And um, our pit crew is always ready and available in Sydney, which is only about 30 minutes from the finish line. We rarely take anything there, but they're ready. There's been years in the past where through congestion or whatever, um, we missed a feed. Um, the luxury of being in our backyard is our feed team could get down the river not too far away and hit us at another spot. One year, um, our pit crew fed us out of a boat in Milford. I was in the bow, and both of our jugs ended up on the the feet of our stern paddler. So that was a little bit interesting. We finally came upon a team, and we were chatting back and forth, and um, they said, "Well, we told them what the problem was, and they said, well, just slow up a little bit and we'll bring that jug up to you." And they were, um, that was a day saver because that was one of those really hot days. So, um, all kinds of strange things can happen during a feed. And um, both the paddlers knowing how to react to that and the pit crew knowing how to react to a problem is really important. Not not always does every feed go as planned.
Yeah, I'd say similarly, I've always planned um, every 2 hours, which is roughly the length of the race. Like if you go like an 8 hour race, 3 feeds gets you there. So I've always fed in Milford, sometimes from a boat. If you have the ability to have an on water boat feed that does ease the congestion, they can paddle away from traffic. They can get you to a better spot, and you're not fighting with other teams to get your food. Um, I'd say the same thing for Wells Bridge. If it's hard to get your food dropped in your lap right at the start of the first shallow drop where you want to kind of sprint. So if you can have the ability to have somebody 100 yards upstream, then you can get your food, get it set, and then be ready to go. Some years I've skipped Wells Bridge and fed at the old dam in Unadilla. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, go. Sorry. So I've fed at the old dam in Unadilla. It's a lot less congested. Um, I feel like I can stretch my feed from Oneonta to get that far, and then I can take a smaller feed at Unadilla to get to the finish line. One year, half of our pit team made it to Oneonta, so my partner got his feed and I missed my feed. But then we had an emergency feed at the boat access just below that big rapid that we were talking about. That I think it was Route 201 bridge. It's a little bit of a deeper water feed for your feed team, but the water smooths out there. It's an easy access. I've had a feed at the fishing access in Otago. That's another easy place that's a little less congested. Pretty much everything after Milford gets less congested because everybody's spread out. But there's just trying. I've always tried to keep my feed team in mind when I'm planning. I try to think what's easy for them because it's a huge commitment for them to be miserably bored all day following us in the boat. Like we're having fun, they're not having fun. So I try to think about what's the least amount of work they have to do to get me to the finish line. So that's how I think about my feeds more than anything else.
Any advice that you would give the feed teams?
No, like tell your racers what you're wearing, like show them, like, so they know how to pick you out of a crowd. If you can kind of pay attention to the race enough to know what boats your team is around, then you can be ready and know when to expect them. Um, and if, especially like in Milford, you'll say where you want them to stand, but that's where everybody's standing, so they're not going to be where you expected them to be. Try to have some contingency plan, have them be able to make themselves visible early. If there's enough of a feed team, send somebody up to the first bend before the feed so that they can yell and say, like, hey, they're on river left, or they're below the bridge, or they're just something to give them enough heads up so that they can line up, get in, get out as efficiently as possible.
I was on feed team the first year before I actually did the race, and I remember thinking to myself, by the time we got to Wellsbridge, it was a hot day, and I remember thinking, I'm never doing this again, and I started paddling. But for the feed team, if they're inexperienced, get to the your first feed, get a parking spot, which is not always easy. Be prepared for almost anything. Sometimes you have to do boat repair. Sometimes you have to um, do things that are unexpected. So if you can be prepared for the unexpected, as well as having all the nutrition items labeled and prepared. Um, and then after that feed, get stuff put away and get to your next spot. And then relax once you get there, because you're probably going to be waiting for a while, but always getting to that next spot and um, being bored at that point until your team comes. Um, it seems important to me. Um, I guess that's my thought.
I guess the other thing that's not really specific to the feed itself, but just because unexpected things can happen, have extra clothes, have your dry clothes, have clothes you don't care about getting ruined by the mud and whatever else. Because I can guarantee that you're going to get wet in Milford. Hopefully, just your knees, but you never know. The rest of the race, you can probably stay dry if everything goes perfect, but you never know if there's going to be something that you have to get out. I've heard stories of people swimming out to give somebody their ibuprofen. They went to hand their bottle over, and the bottle didn't make the hands, and they dove to get it in the boat. I think my cousin was feeding me one year. She slipped on a rock and instinctively grabbed the gunnels, and then thought, oh no, I'm going to split this boat. And she let go of the boat, and under she went, just to make sure that she didn't ruin our race. But yeah, those are some of the unexpected things that can happen. And I think it's just being prepared for it.
And we love our pit crews for it. A couple other questions to kind of wrap up. There's a lot of events going on the weekend of the 70. So have either of you done any of the other events, like Phil, any of the scout races or the generation gap? Like, have you done them, and do you recommend them to other people who might be just wanting like a taste of what the 70's like?
I got into this sport through the scout races. The scout races are on the Unadilla River, not on the Susquehanna, except for the finish 2 or 3 miles. But just for the act of racing itself, I think those are good if you can get into it. I've done I forget what the name of it, but there's a C1 15-mile race on Saturday. Back when the race was on Monday, I did that race. I don't know how smart it was to do that in such a short time frame, but it got me a chance to see the bottom 15 miles. The Generation Gap is a fun race. I don't think it gets you anything as far as like course conditions or scouting, but it is a blast to race with young kids. My daughter Ashlyn here, she's done it the last 2 years. She's already talking about how she's going to try to win this year. So yeah, it's a blast to race with little kids. I think if you can get to the Generation Gap on Friday night, it's so much fun.
Nice.
I've done a couple of the other races. The years that our kids were seniors in high school, I decided not to spend the time getting ready for the long race. So we did the C1 race that Phil just mentioned. It's 15 miles. And then there's also a C2 sprint race that starts above the 357 bridge in Unadilla. I don't know, it's 12-ish miles. And both of those races are generally competitive and also on some fairly technical water. So for those people who don't want to go the long miles to do the 70, those races are a lot of fun.
Nice.
I've got a logistical question. For those of us coming from the north, is there any alternative for the packet pickup besides Bainbridge?
At this point, there's not. Many years ago, they had packet pickup in different places, but it caused so much confusion that, one day for 2 hours it was at this grocery store or here, there, or whatever. And the race committee decided just to bring it all back to Bainbridge. Um, there's just a lot less confusion that way.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the group? I have one last one on my list, but if anybody's holding on to questions and wants to ask them now. No. Well, my last question is a fun one. What's your favorite 70-miler memory? Or maybe it's a hard question. You have a lot of 70-miler memories.
I can almost pick a favorite memory from each year, so it's hard to pick an overall favorite memory.
Top 2 or 3.
I think my dad just chimed in, throwing up on I-88 on my way home. That was
was there
not
for
my favorite.
that.
But I don't know. My first year was obviously a favorite one. Just doing it the first time, and we got past with 5 miles to go. It was a miserably cold year, so we found my dad giving us a chicken soup from Stewart's under one of the bridges. So we pulled over and we're eating our soup and enjoying it. A boat passed us, and we're like, "Oh shoot, we're in third place now." And then we finished the race and got the second place trophy. And so I was like, that soup cost us our victory. We didn't realize we were winning. We thought we were in second place all day. So that was one memory that stood out. Was yeah, if we knew we were in first, we wouldn't have stopped for that soup.
Jeff, do you have a favorite 70-miler memory?
Um, Probably the most memorable thing is going back 20 years. The first time that um, I was there were many more age groups back then in the amateur class, and I was paddling C1, and the guy that had won it for several years in a row was the guy to be in He did not like bumpy water, and I knew that because I had paddled around him. And I trained for bumpy water, and I beat him by 16 seconds, and that'll stick with me for a long time.
Nice. Anyone else want to share their favorite 70-miler memory? I think it's a great race, and I really appreciate Phil and Jeff for hopping on here to give us your experience and your insights and just spreading knowledge of what to expect for people who might be kind of on the fence. We recorded the meeting, so hopefully we can get that up on the new NYPRA YouTube channel. Um, and yeah, I really appreciate everyone joining in. Any last words, Phil and Jeff?
Well, I would say that if anybody has questions come up between now and then, either about doing it for your first time or logistical questions because you're an out of town person, I'm happy to take a phone call, an email, a text, and anything. I'm happy to answer questions or tell you what I do know.
No, I'd say same thing. I'm more than happy to chat racing, uh, training techniques. You can reach out. I mean, through Emma, her contacts on the website. She can forward anything to me if you want to talk. I'm on Facebook, so you can reach out to me there as well. Um, if anyone's in the Western New York area, Western/Central, and you're looking for training buddies, I'm always happy to get in the boat with anybody. So I feel like the more people you can paddle with, it only makes you a better paddler. So uh, feel free to reach out for anything like that as well. And if you can make it to any of the NYPA races, whether it's Susquehanna Valley or anywhere else, all of us love to chat racing. So if you have any questions, come talk to any of us, and on this call or not on this call, I think we'd all be happy to give you pointers and help you come along, because we know it's not an easy sport to get into, and it's a slow sport to get good at. So yeah, we're happy to help you come along in any way.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you everyone for coming. And like I said, we'll have this up and posted somewhere, so we'll share that when we do. Um, but we'll wrap it up there. So have a good night, everyone. Thank you again.
Yeah, have a good night.